Understanding the symbolism in Noah's Ark involves delving into the rich tapestry of meaning embedded in this ancient biblical narrative. At its core, the symbolism in Noah's Ark serves as a multifaceted allegory that conveys themes of divine judgment, redemption, and the renewal of creation. The ark itself represents salvation and preservation amid chaos, while the flood symbolizes both destruction and cleansing. This narrative holds immense significance as it reflects universal themes of morality, human behavior, and the consequences of actions, featuring prominently in religious, cultural, and literary contexts. In religious discourse, Noah's Ark is often interpreted as a representation of God's covenant with humanity. The preservation of Noah, his family, and the animals underscores the idea of divine mercy and the possibility of redemption for the righteous. In the Jewish and Christian traditions, the ark signifies hope and a fresh start for humankind. These interpretations have influenced theological teachings and contribute to the broader understanding of divine justice and compassion. Beyond religious contexts, the symbolism of Noah's Ark also manifests in real-world applications. For example, conservationists often use the narrative to highlight the urgent need for biodiversity preservation and environmental stewardship, drawing parallels between the Ark and efforts to protect endangered species. Similarly, the story is a powerful metaphor in discussions about climate change, emphasizing the necessity of collective responsibility and preparedness in the face of global challenges. Several scholars and theologians, such as Paul Tillich and Joseph Campbell, have discussed the archetypal nature of flood myths, including Noah's Ark, as symbolic expressions of existential truths. They argue that such symbols transcend specific religious doctrines, resonating with deep psychological and cultural instincts. However, the story of Noah's Ark is not without its controversies. Skeptics question its historical and scientific plausibility, while others critique the ethical implications of a divine force enacting global destruction. Additionally, some see the narrative as problematic due to its portrayal of divine wrath and apparent favoritism. The symbolism in Noah's Ark connects with broader themes in theology and mythology, influencing interpretations of creation, destruction, and the human condition. It invites reflection on ethical behavior, the nature of faith, and our relationship with the environment. As a potent symbol, Noah's Ark continues to inspire and provoke debate, highlighting the enduring human quest for meaning and understanding in the stories we tell. The historical and cultural background of the Noah's Ark narrative serves as a foundational element for understanding its symbolism. This ancient story is primarily documented in the Bible's book of Genesis, but its roots and iterations are found in various cultures, notably in the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh. Both narratives share striking similarities, including a great flood and a hero who builds a vessel to save a remnant of life, suggesting a common cultural and historical motif of flood stories in ancient civilizations. This aligns with the importance of water as a symbol of both destruction and renewal, a significant aspect of this narrative's symbolic power. Understanding the historical context in which the Noah's Ark narrative arose is crucial. It reflects the human experience of natural disasters, the struggle for survival, and the renewal of life, themes deeply woven into the fabric of human consciousness. The tale has endured over millennia, underscoring its cultural significance and the universal human concerns it addresses. One real-world application can be observed in its moral lessons, which are timeless. For instance, the narrative speaks to the importance of obedience and faith, qualities that have traditionally been encouraged in societies and can shape ethical paradigms. Another application is its influence on environmental consciousness. In modern contexts, Noah's Ark is frequently referenced in discussions about conservation and the preservation of biodiversity, inspiring movements that advocate for the protection of our planet's diverse forms of life. Scholars and believers alike often express the idea that the story of Noah's Ark transcends its religious origins, offering insights into human resilience and the capacity for renewal. The symbolism of the Ark as a vessel of salvation and hope resonates with many, encouraging interpretations that emphasize harmony between humanity and nature. However, the narrative is also subject to controversies, especially with differing interpretations across religious and scientific communities. Some view it strictly as allegory, while others believe in its historical veracity. Skeptics often challenge the feasibility of the story, questioning the logistics of such a global flood and the preservation of species. This backdrop influences other symbolic aspects of Noah's Ark, such as the covenant between God and humanity, represented by the rainbow, which serves as a promise of protection against future cataclysm. It underscores the narrative's broader themes of divine justice and mercy, further enriching its symbolic interpretation. Understanding this context not only provides insight into the narrative itself, but also enhances our appreciation of its enduring legacy and relevance. The symbolism of water and cleansing in the story of Noah's Ark is a rich and multifaceted concept with profound implications. In many cultures and texts, water is often seen as both a life-giving and destructive force. It represents purity, renewal, and a fresh start, but also carries the power to sweep away the old and corrupt. In the context of Noah's Ark, water acts as an agent of divine intervention, cleansing the earth of its pervasive wickedness. This story from the book of Genesis does not just depict a physical cleansing. It symbolizes a moral and spiritual purification intended to set the stage for a new beginning for humanity. The significance of this symbolism is crucial to understanding the broader narrative of Noah's Ark. It underscores the theme of redemption and the possibility of new beginnings following devastation. In this biblical story, the flood is both an end and a beginning, the eradication of corruption and the opportunity for a fresh start centered on righteousness. This reinforces the notion that transformation often necessitates sacrifice and destruction of the flawed in favor of the potential for betterment. Real-world applications of this symbolism can be found, for example, in religious rituals such as baptism in Christianity, which symbolizes the cleansing of sin and rebirth in spiritual life. Similarly, the act of setting resolutions or making a fresh start after a major life upheaval echoes the cleansing theme, using the metaphorical flood to wash away past failures or misdeeds to embrace change. Support for this symbolism often comes from theological interpretations that see the flood as a narrative designed to emphasize God's mercy as much as His justice. The deluge was necessary to make room for regeneration and grace, showcasing the dichotomy of destruction versus renewal. However, challenges to this viewpoint may arise from alternative interpretations that question the morality of a purge-like cleansing. Critics argue that it portrays destructive force as a means of divine testing or wrath, which can be seen as troubling. Furthermore, some argue that such narratives can be misused to justify harmful actions under the guise of necessary purification. This concept of water and cleansing intricately ties into the central themes of Noah's Ark, influencing the understanding of divine morality, justice, and redemption. It emphasizes the idea that destruction can serve as a precursor to renewal, and internal and external transformation often requires letting go of the old, making way for the new. This intertwines beautifully with the overarching themes of faith, obedience, and hope throughout the story. The Ark as a symbol of salvation and preservation is a profound concept within the narrative of Noah's Ark, encapsulating the idea of divine rescue and sustenance amid catastrophic adversity. This symbolism not only underscores the faith in divine provision, but also highlights the broader themes of hope and renewal. In the biblical story, the Ark is depicted as the vessel through which Noah, his family, and selected animal species are saved from the flood, representing divine intervention and grace in the face of impending destruction. The significance of viewing the Ark as a symbol of salvation is multifold. It serves as a cornerstone for understanding the larger narrative of redemption in various religious contexts, particularly within Christianity and Judaism, where it is often interpreted as an allegory for the salvific power of faith and obedience. The notion of preservation ties into the conservation of life and continuity, which carries spiritual implications concerning the enduring nature of God's covenant with humanity. A real-world example of this symbolism can be seen in churches and synagogues using the Ark analogy to convey messages of hope and divine support during challenging times. Another application is the preservation efforts in biodiversity projects, where the conceptual ark is mirrored in conservation arcs that aim to protect endangered species, acting as modern-day vessels of preservation. Supporters of this interpretation argue that the ark's narrative inspires individuals and communities to resilience and faith amidst adversity, emphasizing a hopeful perspective on divine salvation and moral duty to preserve life in all its forms. However, this concept isn't without challenges. Critics point out the literal interpretation of Noah's Ark may clash with scientific perspectives on the feasibility of such an event. Additionally, the exclusive focus on divine intervention could overshadow human responsibility in addressing moral wrongs and environmental preservation. This concept connects deeply with themes of renewal and divine human relationships depicted in the Noah's Ark story. As the Ark delivers its occupants to a cleansed world, it signifies new beginnings in the restoration of life, linking the motif of salvation with the cycles of judgment and grace. Understanding the Ark as a symbol of salvation and preservation thus enriches the exploration of its broader symbolism, offering a lens through which to explore not only ancient faith narratives, but also contemporary lessons on hope, humanity, and stewardship.